Few games have captivated the gaming landscape as quickly and as ferociously as this year's Clair Obscur Expedition 33. While I didn't quite get the hype myself, this is Suggestive Gaming after all, and suggestions for me to cover the story have been pouring in since the game's launch. While I usually don't cover the storylines of new releases, I guess it's finally time to live up to my name. As always, this video will contain full spoilers for the game's story, including its ending, so if you haven't finished it yet and want to go in blind, now's your chance to turn back. While I considered diving into Clair Obscur's story in the order the game tells it, preserving any and all plot twists, an overwhelming response has led me to take a more chronological approach. As such, this is your final spoiler warning, as the early sections of this video are going to ruin several of the game's crucial story beats. If you're here for a better understanding or just to re-experience the story, stick around. Otherwise, go watch another one of my videos, as I could always use the views. Similarly to my other videos, I'm going to have to skip over a lot of the game's side quests to focus on the main narrative, but I am going to cover plenty of optional content that directly relates to the main storyline. Also, despite my last name being Picard, I don't speak a lick of French, and my pronunciations are likely going to be horrendous. My sincerest apologies to all of my ancestors in advance. With all of that out of the way, let's explore the story of Lumière. Now, without further ado, this is what you need to know about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Our story begins in an alternate early 20th century version of Paris, France. There, we find the Desandre family, standing at the center of a secret society of art-based magic. Renoir and Aline Desandre are master painters, artists who can bring the magical worlds within their canvases to life. They have 3 children, all of whom are budding painters. Among them are Clair, the ambitious eldest daughter, Verso, the gentle son more interested in music than magic, and Alicia, the youngest and most impressionable. The painters have long been in conflict with a rival group of magical artists, the writers, who use words to build worlds instead of brushes. This war erupts in tragedy on December 33, 1905, when the writers somehow gain Alicia's trust, allowing them to start a fire within the Desandres' home. Verso saves his younger sister from the fire, but he unfortunately loses his life during his heroic sacrifice. Alicia is left badly burned from the flames, leaving her face scarred and taking her ability to speak. The remaining family is left devastated by Verso's death. Unable to cope with losing her son, Aline literally retreats from reality. Locating Verso's childhood canvas, she uses her own powers as a paintress to enter the fantasy world of her son's creation. Within this art realm, Aline repaints it to erase the tragedy, bringing to life painted versions of her own family, a painted Renoir, Clair, Verso, and Alicia. Deciding to live in a beautiful illusion where Verso is still alive, Aline dwells with her painted family within Lumière, the canvas's version of their real hometown, Paris. Realizing that Aline's mind is starting to distort due to her increasingly long trips into the canvas, her husband Renoir decides to finally pull her out of it before it consumes her completely. Entering the canvas himself, Renoir finds Aline and pleads with her to return to reality. Refusing to lose Verso again, however, she refuses vehemently. This leads to a physical clash between the two, and the eruption of their painter powers inside of the canvas causes the world's geography to shatter into floating islands and fragmented landscapes. Lumière is thrust into the ocean of the painted world, becoming an isolated island. This cataclysmic event is then known by all of those inhabiting the canvas world as the Fracture. In the aftermath of their battle, Aline and Renoir become trapped inside the canvas, eternally at odds with one another. Aline ends up imprisoned atop an ominous structure called the Monolith, surrounded by swirling energy and protected by a powerful barrier. Renoir, meanwhile, is sealed at the bottom of the monolith, unable to leave his prison of paint. From below, Renoir seeks to end the false world in order to force Aline out. He uses destructive painter magic to initiate the Gommage, a deadly yearly erasure that wipes out anyone in the painting above a certain age. Every year following the fracture, the maximum age of survival drops, causing the population to live in fear as their age limit decreases annually. Renoir essentially weaponizes the canvas's magic to erase Aline's creations bit by bit, hoping this will break her resolve or destroy the canvas entirely, whichever comes first. From above, Aline tries to preserve her sanctuary. Though mentally and physically deteriorating, she uses what power she has to protect Lumiere's inhabitants from Renoir's full wrath. On the towering monolith, she paints a number that decreases each year, warning of the shrinking age limit imposed by the Gommage. This act backfires, however, as the people within the canvas soon associate her as the force behind the Gommage, as opposed to their only protection from it. This earns her the fearful title of the Paintress among the canvas's inhabitants, who are unaware of her identity as Aline Desandra, simply trying to hold the world together for the painted version of her family. Meanwhile, the painted copies of the Desandra children that Aline made, painted Clair, painted Verso, and painted Alicia, survive the fracture, now effectively immortal within the canvas world. The painted siblings wander the broken continent, grappling with the yearly loss of the ordinary people around them, as each Gommage erases the oldest among the population. Eventually, painted Clair comes under the influence of her real-world counterpart. The real Clair never enters the canvas herself, but still somehow finds a way to possess or control her painted counterpart at times. Enraged by Aline's betrayal and still bent on vengeance, real Clair uses painted Clair as a proxy inside of the canvas to paint horrifying creatures called Nevrons into the world. These monsters devour chroma, the life force within the canvas that gives Aline her power. Hoping this will tip the scales in Renoir's favor, Clair sides with her father's goal of ending the painted world, seeing it as an abomination born of her mother's grief. Curiously, Aline's painted copy of Renoir, painted Renoir, as well as the painted replica of her lost son, painted Verso, also remain active in the canvas, living within the remains of the isolated Lumière. Determined to save their people, the leaders of Lumière begin sending out expeditions to the broken mainland continent in order to search for answers and a way to end the Gommage. This project begins with Expedition Zero, launching the same year of the fracture. Expedition Zero is led by none other than painted Renoir and painted Verso, hoping to find the missing paintress, who they know as Aline. However, as they reach the barrier protecting the monolith, they're met by Clair. Clair, the real one speaking through her painted counterpart, reveals the entire truth of her family's situation to her painted counterparts. She then attempts to stop them, wiping out the entire expedition, save for the painted Verso and Renoir, still protected by Aline's powers, effectively granting them immortality within the realm. The painted Renoir and Verso then return to Lumière to try to warn the population about the real Renoir underneath the monolith, but their cries fall on deaf ears. Lumière's citizens instead meet them with skepticism and panic, leading painted Verso and painted Renoir to flee the city to never return. In the aftermath of Expedition Zero, painted Renoir and Verso each cope with the curse of immortality in very different ways. Painted Renoir, desperate to preserve the world Aline created, resolves to protect his wife's sanctuary at any cost, even if it means waging war against would-be saviors from Lumière. Painted Verso, on the other hand, grows to despise this unnatural immortality. Burdened by guilt and by the knowledge that he is merely a copy of his real-world self, Verso eventually decides he would rather see their false world end than continue living a lie. He quietly resolves to free his mother from the canvas and, in doing so, allow the real Renoir to erase everything, gaining the freedom to finally die in peace. Meanwhile, despite the failure of the first expedition, Lumière eventually picks the program back up, sending out annual expeditions which, unfortunately, fail year after year. Lumière's citizenship gets younger and younger, as those who embark on the expeditions perish, either by hazards out in the continent or by the Gommage itself. The phrase, "When one falls, we continue," becomes their motto, reflecting that when one expedition fails, another will continue their work and carry on the mission. Over the 67 years following the fracture, dozens of expeditions failed to stop the Gommage. Each attempt, whether through innovative engineering or Verso's covert assistance, is ultimately thwarted by Renoir's interventions. In the real world, Alicia de Sandra, the youngest daughter of Renoir and Aline, is instructed by her sister, Clair, to enter the canvas in an attempt to free their parents from their endless duel. As she does, however, Aline's unstable chroma magic overwhelms her, and she is effectively repainted as a newborn child within the canvas. This baby girl is given the name Maelle, and when her parents pass, she is taken into the care of two siblings in Lumière, named Gustave and Emma. Maelle grows up having no memories or knowledge of her previous persona. Clair informs the painted Verso about the girl, and he secretly watches over her, making several covert trips to Lumière over the years to check in on her. After 18 years pass in the real world, time is literally running out within the canvas's Lumière. The number on the monolith year, ticks down to 34. On the eve of the next Gommage, we find Gustave, now 33 years old, having volunteered to join the next expedition, Expedition 33. While Gustave isn't a soldier, his academic skills contribute greatly to the invention of the Lumina Converter, a device that can weaponize the world's chroma to hopefully give his expedition the edge against the Paintress. Gustave prepares a flower for an old friend, whom he was once romantically involved with, a 34-year-old woman named Sophie. The pair elect to spend her final day together. As the Gommage finally arrives, Sophie and Gustave acknowledge their shared love, before she fades into a trail of flower petals, her existence erased by Renoir's annual act of spite. Later, Lumière holds a festival to celebrate Expedition 33 on their final night before departing for the continent. After Gustave mingles with his fellow expeditioners, including a widow named Ciel and a chroma researcher named Lune, he meets with his pupils, who implore him to journal his journey. He also meets with Maelle, who has volunteered to join Expedition 33 despite being only 16 years old, something her guardians Gustave and Emma failed to talk her out of. Emma then arrives and gives a heartfelt goodbye speech, thanking the expeditioners for sacrificing their final year of life to keep their hope alive. Expedition 33 then board a ship and wave their final farewells as it embarks out to sea. Sailing toward the monolith, the expedition departs, hoping to be the last one to do so. Unfortunately, disaster strikes immediately. Upon reaching the dark shores of the continent, the team walks into an ambush. Expedition 33 are met by a white-haired painted Renoir, accompanied by an army of monsters under his command. While the team have no knowledge of painted Renoir, as the record of his participation in Expedition 0 has been lost to time, they immediately recognize that he's unnaturally old, and should have been gommaged years ago. Painted Renoir suddenly attacks, and the ambush is devastating, with nearly the entirety of Expedition 33 wiped out in minutes. Amid explosions and chromatic fire, Gustave witnesses his comrades, Alan, Catherine, Tristan, Lucien, Margot, and many more, being slaughtered as the team is overwhelmed. In the chaos, a blast separates Maelle from the rest. Unbeknownst to Gustave, Maelle narrowly survives. She is secretly rescued by Painted Verso, who has been shadowing the expedition. Verso spirits the unconscious girl away to the painted canvas version of the old Desandra Manor, leaving her in the care of a being called the Curator, a fading guide which, unbeknownst to them, is manifesting from their real-world father's memory. Gustave doesn't know this, however, and loses hope, believing that Maelle likely died along with the others. Luckily, Gustave is met by another survivor, Lune, who reminds him that when one falls, we continue. The pair then use the still functional Lumina Converter to fight the Nevron threats as they push inland to search for any other survivors as they continue their mission. Soon, the pair reach the Flying Waters, where they find a mysterious doorway that takes them to the old manor. Inside, Gustave is shocked and relieved to reunite with the surviving Maelle. The girl introduces her fellow expeditioners to the Curator, who follows them back to their camp to offer his assistance in upgrading their gear. On their way out of the manor, the trio come across a small gestrel, a race of inhabitants within the canvas, named Noko. Noko, who was a wise old gestrel before his reincarnation a decade prior, more on that later, has struck up a friendship with Maelle during her time at the manor. He advises the group to meet with the gestrel's chief, Golgra, for a means to cross the vast sea separating them from the paintress. On their way to the gestrel village, Maelle starts to have nightmares of painted Renoir and painted Alicia, hinting at her connection to both of them. Upon reaching the village, Gustave finds a fading memory of a young Verso, although he has no idea who the boy is, who speaks cryptically about his past. The group are then met by the gestrel's massive, robust Sakapatat, attacking them to defend the village, believing the expeditioners to be Nevrons. After they defeat the machine, they're let into the village, where they defeat the ultimate Sakapatat, finally earning them an audience with the village's chief, Golgra. They ask for a way to cross the sea, and Golgra sends them to find Esquier, a fabled being of immense power, who unbeknownst to everyone was painted into the canvas by a young Verso, based on his favorite stuffed doll. In order to enter Esquier's nest, however, the group will require a secret password. To obtain it, Golgra enters them into a physical tournament with the password as the prize. The three reach the final fight and are shocked to find their opponent is none other than a surviving CL. The expeditioners' reunion is cut short as the gestrel crowd demand a fight, and CL draws her scythe to initiate it. After a quick sparring match, the reunited group get the password to Esquier's nest. Get out of my way. Using it, they find Esquier in his nest, and the gentle giant, who recognizes CL from long ago, agrees to help them cross the waters so long as they retrieve Flory, a special rock that gives him the power to swim. Flory was stolen by his grumpy neighbor, Francois. The group find Francois, who turns out to be a stationary, turtle-shaped, rock-like talking curmudgeon. They battle Francois in a fierce, grueling fight, but emerge victorious only to learn that the rock he stole from Esquier wasn't actually Flory. Regardless, Esquier agrees to go with them to the Stone Wave Cliffs to retrieve the real rock. As they reach the cliffs, they find that Esquier is in fact extremely powerful, just also extremely lazy. The group fights through the powerful Nevron forces to finally find the real Flory. Just as Esquier retrieves it, returning his ability to swim, the group's celebration is quickly cut short by an arriving painted Renoir. At this point, painted Verso watches his father prepare to strike down Gustave, and, believing that losing her attachment to her brother would ultimately allow Maelle to destroy the canvas, he doesn't intervene. Maelle is then stunned to silence as an instant, surprise attack strikes Gustave through his chest, splattering her brother's blood onto hers. With his final words, Gustave tells Maelle to run, using his last bit of strength in a final stand against Renoir to protect his sister. His efforts quickly prove to be futile, however, as Gustave quickly falls to painted Renoir's overwhelming power. The man then pushes Maelle into another nightmare, again flooding her with an unfamiliar memory of her true origins. When Maelle comes back to, Verso finally intervenes and steps between his father and his sister. Renoir states that he wants his family back, while Verso reminds him that it was never his family in the first place. Meanwhile, Maelle is still left overwhelmed with emotion, grieving over her brother Gustave's body. Verso then gestures to a nearby painted Alicia, who's also been watching the events unfold from afar. Verso then helps Maelle up and sends her off to regroup with her friends. Painted Renoir then departs with a final warning to his son, who proclaims that Aline will never paint again. Back at camp, the survivors of Expedition 33 regroup with Esquier, and they all mourn Gustave's death. They're surprisingly met by Verso, who arrives and apologizes for being unable to save their friend. They notice his expedition uniform, and he reveals that he was part of the very first one, along with his commander, Renoir, keeping their relationship to each other close to the vest. Furthermore, he reveals their shared immortality thanks to the Paintress's protection. The group allows Verso to join them on their mission, and Maelle determines that now they've got two targets, the Paintress, then Renoir. Now led by Verso, reunited with his old friend Esquier, the group continued toward the Paintress. On their way, they stop in the Forgotten Battlefield, where scores of fallen expeditioners remain. They find a peaceful spot under a tree and hold a makeshift funeral for Gustave, creating a memorial using his final remains, his mechanical, prosthetic arm. Later at camp, Verso determines that the only way they can reach the Paintress is to weaken her by destroying her heart, which is somewhere within the remains of old Lumière, which broke off from the city during the fracture. First, however, Verso elects to go to Minoko's station in order to recruit its namesake, a gestural who's been Verso's longest friend. Before they head out, Maelle accepts Verso into the team, giving him Gustave's Expedition 33 armband, welcoming him to what they have named the Disaster Expedition. The group soon reach the station where they meet Minoko, who quickly challenges them to a duel. They spar with him, learning of his unique ability to transform into Nevrons to borrow their attacks by defeating them and collecting their feet, a power that even Verso doesn't understand. Verso speaks with Minoko in secret, convincing him to join them, as Maelle is his last chance to bring an end to Aline's reign over the canvas world. Seeing a lot of fights in his future, Minoko agrees to come along, bringing Noko with him, who was actually Minoko's guardian before his resurrection, which Minoko was integral to. Still, more on that later. When Expedition 33 reaches Old Lumière, Minoko attempts to clear a path for them to reach the center of the city. However, in his excitement to show off to his new friends, the gestural causes the ground to collapse beneath them, separating Verso, Noko, and Maelle from the rest of the group. While on their own, Ciel, Lune, and Minoko find another one of Esquier's lost stones. Maelle and Verso soon reach the old Desandra Manor, where the door opens to reveal Aline in her Paintress form. Verso moves to strike, but is immediately stopped by an arriving painted Renoir. The painted Alicia then arrives as well, and the door to the manor closes once again as Verso looks at his sister, silently noting her connection to the nearby Maelle. Suddenly, Lune, Ciel, and Minoko arrive with chilling news for Maelle. Having found the journal of one of the previous expeditions Verso accompanied, Expedition 58, the two expeditioners have learned, with Minoko's confirmation, that Renoir is actually their new friend's father. Unfortunately, Verso doesn't have time to detail the complicated history of his family drama, as another battle with Renoir immediately kicks off on the manor's lawn. While Expedition 33 defeats Renoir in a battle, a final blast of his energy unfortunately strikes an unwitting participant. In the wake of the attack, Verso turns to see Minoko holding the lifeless body of his former mentor, Noko, once again returned to the gestural river of souls to await reincarnation. I swear, there's still more on this later. As Verso and Renoir fight, time suddenly comes to a stop around Maelle. Suddenly, the door to the manor opens again, and painted Alicia walks out, staring at Maelle as she takes off her white mask, revealing the burns underneath. Maelle then has flashes of her buried memories of the Inferno, before painted Alicia disappears back into the manor, which is now aflame. Suddenly, the manor vanishes, Alicia and Renoir along with it. Back at camp, Ciel gives the stone she found to Esquier, who reveals that it'll help them smash through certain obstacles on the continent, allowing them to continue their journey toward the Paintress. While the team are disappointed in Verso hiding the truth from them, they agree that family is complicated, allowing him to remain with the group. Minoko then holds what remains of Noko, noting that even when Noko is reincarnated, it will be a new Noko, mourning the loss of his friend. Without the Paintress's heart, the group decides to follow Expedition 58's journal once again. Lune then asks the curator to make them a weapon that can pierce the magic barrier surrounding the monolith. To make this, however, the curator requires the hearts of 3 Axons, monumental enemy constructs, each embodying aspects of the Desandra family. It turns out Renoir painted these Axons as guardians of the monolith barrier. The Axon Cyrene, for example, is a dancer related to Aline's essence, who plays with the expeditioners' minds by showing them their lost loved ones, while the Axon Visages and its Mask Keeper draws power from the emotions of Verso. According to Verso, destroying 2 of the 4 Axons should give them enough chroma to weaken the monolith's barrier just enough to penetrate it. The party then engages in tough battles to reach and neutralize the two accents. During their travels, Verso finds more fading memories, this time unknowingly of his father and sister, Clair. After defeating the first accent, Maelle gives the chroma left in its wake to the curator, catching a glimpse of his true identity as Renoir as they touch. Later at camp, Maelle plays piano with Verso, reflecting a memory of himself and his sister. When the second accent is defeated, Maelle likewise gives the chroma to the curator, this time seeing the paintress in a vision. When she's broken out of it, the curator presents them with the weapon he's created from the chroma, the barrier breaker, which Maelle can use to break the barrier. Verso then reveals that Esquier is holding his private stash of wine, and the group, except for Maelle because she's too young, toast to celebrate finally being able to reach the paintress. Later, in secret, the painted Alicia appears before Verso, handing him a sealed letter before he takes off her mask, telling his sister that she doesn't need it. Verso hugs her, just as painted Renoir appears to question why he'd condemn his sister to death if he loves her. Renoir states that he isn't there to fight, but rather to question whether Verso will be able to erase his new friends along with the rest of the canvas. Sometime later, the group finally reach the barrier, where Maelle uses the barrier breaker to open the pathway, finally allowing them to reach the paintress. Expedition 33 remember Gustave and all who came before him as they approach the monolith to initiate the final battle. Fighting with all of the strength they've gathered up to this point, the team fights the paintress, but finds that their attacks don't phase her. Suddenly, the group are transported by the paintress to the inside of the monolith. They then climb to the top, seeing visions of Aline, Renoir, and their children along the way. Painted Renoir then tries to stop the painted Verso one last time, attempting to reason with him to no avail yet again. Renoir tries to physically stop them, but they're able to team up to fight him in a grueling battle, eventually incapacitating him. Painted Renoir then sarcastically celebrates the second destruction of the Desandra family, before he's suddenly interrupted by an arriving curator. Painted Renoir recognizes the figure as the essence of the real Renoir, finally meeting him face to face. The curator then takes Maelle's hand, and the pair place their hands on Painted Renoir. He proclaims his love for his family before Maelle and the curator destroy the painted Renoir Desandra for good. The curator then disappears, and Maelle successfully avenges Gustave's slaying. With one final obstacle in their way, the group confront the paintress one last time. Standing atop the monolith, the group finds the paintress. She immediately turns to recognize Verso, but is surprised to see Maelle, believing Renoir to be playing another trick on her by using their daughter's face. Refusing to lose her son's canvas, the paintress erupts into a final battle. The group then summons all of their strength to defeat her, but their victory is short-lived. In the wake of their first battle, the paintress brings forth the giant figure that painted the number on the monolith, using it in another fight to the death. Expedition 33 uses all of the skills they've gathered to this point to complete their generations-long mission, finally defeating the paintress in battle. As she falls, the paintress realizes that the creations she's fighting aren't Renoir's, they're her own. She uses her last bit of strength to protect the expeditioners instead of harming them, knowing that without her, Renoir will destroy them along with the rest of the canvas. The paintress then dies, fading away while calling Maelle by her real name, Alicia. With the paintress finally gone, the number disappears from the monolith. Maelle plants Expedition 33's flag atop the structure, finally declaring their victory. Lumiere's mission a success after generations failed before them. Esquier then flies the group back to Lumière, where the survivors of the disaster expedition return to a homecoming celebration. Maelle delivers the unfortunate news of Gustave's passing to his pupils and his sister, Emma. Painted Verso, meanwhile, finally opens the letter his sister wrote to him. In it, Painted Alicia writes that with the loss of the paintress, nothing will protect the creations within the canvas from Renoir's Gommage. She then ends the letter with a message to Maelle, who she sees as who Alicia was meant to be, without the physical or emotional scars. Verso decides not to give Maelle the letter, instead electing for her to learn the truth for herself. As he drops it into the waters, a blast suddenly erupts from beneath the monolith. Renoir's final Gommage immediately sweeps through Lumière, and Maelle is forced to helplessly watch all of the friends and neighbors she had just fought so hard to protect vanish from existence before her very eyes. Left alone, Maelle falls to her knees as she herself disappears into a cloud of flower petals. Sometime later, in the real world, Alicia, now exited from the canvas, hides it so her mother cannot re-enter it. Clair meets her in the hiding place, but states that this is only a temporary solution, as Aline will search endlessly till she finds it again. Clair urges Alicia to destroy the canvas to put an end to their mother's suffering, but she can't help but remember the life she lived inside of it. Alicia then re-enters the canvas instead, finding the sole survivor of Renoir's final Gommage, the painted copy of her brother, Verso. Alicia, her hair now turned white, approaches her brother, expressing her desire to go by Maelle from now on. Having the combined memories of both her original persona and her repainted alter, Maelle acknowledges that while Verso may look and sound like her brother, he's his own person. And while it's unfortunate that her mother created a lie, she's happy that this Verso exists. The real Renoir soon arrives, transforming from his curator form back into his own appearance, before addressing Maelle as Alicia and expressing relief that she's safe. He praises her for getting Aline out of the canvas and offers what he sees as a final mercy, to destroy the canvas and finally end everything. Maelle is blindsided by this offer, revealing that she hid the canvas to ensure its protection, but Renoir, like Clair, insists that Aline will always find a way back, and now is their only chance to destroy it while she's too weak to return. Maelle pleads with him, arguing that the canvas is all that remains of her brother, but Renoir refuses, insisting that he won't lose his daughter to the canvas like he once did her mother. As he prepares to send her home by calling forth forces of enemies, the tensions are broken as Esquier and Minoko arrive, calling the others to join them. Maelle protects Verso from Renoir's Gommage as the pair rush to join them. Afterward, back at camp, Maelle struggles to paint things into existence, frustrated that she can't do it as easily as her father. Minoko reminds her that she only recently found out about her abilities as a painter, and Verso offers encouragement, telling her that painting is about capturing essence, not accuracy. With the power of a paintress reawakened, Maelle determines that she'll need chroma to resurrect those who have been erased. With Renoir controlling all of the remaining chroma in the world, Lune remembers that Gustave had noticed the fallen expeditioners they came across still retained all of their chroma. The group then embark on the greatest expedition in history, revisiting the locations of all of the previous expeditions to collect the chroma from those who came before them. Once complete, they return to camp to reflect on the nature of the Accents, who were manifestations of Aline and Verso's emotional essence, painted by Renoir. The group begin to understand just how personal and broken the world they've inherited is. Lune and Ciel begin to process everything. Lune confronts Maelle about her true nature and lashes out at Verso for betraying the expedition. Ciel, though furious, chooses to focus on the hope that death may no longer be permanent. Verso has private conversations with both women. Ciel tells him that she'll forgive him so long as he brings back her husband, Pierre. Lune isn't so forgiving, calling him a coward and accusing him of withholding the truth when they could have worked together. Maelle asserts that they must now stop Renoir from erasing the canvas. Verso warns that the real cycle they need to break isn't just the Gommage, but instead the Desandre family's cycle of grief. Aline wanting her son back, Renoir wanting Aline and Maelle back, and now Maelle wanting Gustave back. Later, Maelle writes in Gustave's journal, recording everything that's happened. She wants to preserve the truth for the apprentices she hopes to bring back, honoring Gustave's memory for those who come after. Ciel and Luna reaffirm their support for Maelle, recognizing her as one of their own despite her true origins. Maelle reflects on her dual identity and admits that despite the pain, she's finally found her family, both the one she lost and the one she chose. As they prepare to return to Lumière to face Renoir for the final time, the group carry a renewed sense of hope. Before the battle, however, each member has their own moments to share with Verso if he so chooses. One of these moments sees Maelle confronting Verso after finding Alicia's letter. She tells him that she wants to see painted Alicia, to understand her as well as their mother. Despite Verso's resistance, Maelle insists, arguing that she might be able to finally help the painted Alicia in a way that Verso can't. Verso reluctantly tells her that Alicia likely resides near the third exit, in a giant atop a mountain. The party climbs the tower, which symbolically represents hope, painted by Renoir much like the others. On the way up, they reflect on Renoir's habit of embedding parables in his art, and Maelle opens up about her insecurities as the youngest sibling. Verso counters, saying that she's always been Renoir's hidden star, his real favorite. She just never saw it. Maelle finds Alicia at the top, and she speaks to her painted sister with compassion, and Alicia asks Maelle to send her to their family. Verso protests, but Maelle fulfills Alicia's wish, letting her go in peace. Back at camp, Verso is heartbroken, accusing Maelle of acting too quickly, taking his chance to say goodbye to his sister away from him. Though Maelle tries to explain, Verso lashes out, accusing her of erasing the last of his family. Still, through the pain, they reconcile, both acknowledging that while Alicia made her own choice, Maelle should have given Verso a moment to say farewell. The pair then repaint the face of the monolith. This time, instead of a number warning the citizens of Lumière, they instead leave a warning to their father. In his native tongue, they write, "Papa, you go home," on the side of the massive structure. Minoko, meanwhile, convinces Verso to help him bring Noko back, again. He hopes to help his mentor again skip to the front of the line, despite the usual rules of the sacred river. Golgra tries to stop them, annoyed that Minoko is trying to skip the queue again, but Minoko instead challenges her to a trial by combat. After a humorous scuffle, interrupted by leg day, Golgra relents and allows them to revive Noko. Noko wakes up confused, not remembering anyone, and is taken back to the Gestrel village to recover with his fellow Gestrels. Minoko is devastated by how Noko always comes back changed, mourning the version of his friend that he's now lost. Back at camp, Minoko opens to Verso about why he rushed Noko's revival, because he wants to protect the one who raised him, just as Noko once protected him. Despite the pain and uncertainty, Minoko affirms his commitment to helping Verso, for both Verso's sake and for the real Verso, who gave them all new beginnings. I told you all the Noko stuff would come back later. Here it is. Verso also leads the group to the trail of Expedition 46, Lune's parents' expedition, sealed behind a locked gate. Lune unlocks the gate by playing a song on her guitar, opening the way forward with a haunting melody. Inside, she finds the corpses of friends of her family. They recover a journal and head back to camp, where Lune is visibly shaken. Verso comforts her, and Lune unloads years of pressure and expectation, and how even in death, her parents' voices haunt her. Verso encourages her to reclaim her own identity and remember that the only voice in her head that matters is her own. Ciel, meanwhile, has a realization of how she knows Esquier. He saved her once, long ago when she tried to swim out to sea after losing her husband. Verso then helps her overcome her fear of swimming, helping strengthen their bond. After tying up all of their loose ends and defeating as many of the Nevrons Clea created as the player's attention span can handle, Expedition 33 prepares for the final push into Lumière to confront Renoir and stop him from erasing the canvas. Along the way, the group finds the ruined city under siege, now flooded with Axan Nevrons of Renoir's creation, not Clea's. Fighting through waves of Renoir's creations, the group soon reach him standing alone. Maelle pleads with him not to erase Verso's canvas, and with it, the last remnant of her brother. Renoir responds with pained understanding. He knows all too well of the temptation of the canvas and how grief warps intentions. However, he insists that this is the only way to protect Maelle from wasting away like her mother. Each member of the party speaks out. Ciel reminds Renoir how grief leads to irreversible mistakes. Lune condemns parental control masquerading as love. Maelle breaks down, saying she tried to find joy again but couldn't. Verso's death crushed her. Seeing no other choice, Renoir prompts a battle with his daughter and her painted partners. He reemerges as his curator form, attacking in a fight that tests all of the expedition's abilities. Unfortunately, the accent Cyrene appears and continuously regenerates Renoir's health, effectively stopping the battle in its tracks. Just as the group begins to lose hope, Aline discovers the canvas in the outside world and re-enters it, much to Renoir's dismay. Aline looks at her husband face to face and summons the massive paintress once again, using it to distract Cyrene in a ground-shattering, kaiju-like battle. After a final, furious fight, Maelle is able to deliver the final strike to the curator form of her father, finally bringing an end to his control over the canvas. In the wake of the battle, Renoir returns to his human form and reveals that since the fire, he's also lived in torment, forced to watch his family clinging to the past. He confesses that he can't watch his family die again. Maelle begs him to let her stay just a little longer, not forever, but just long enough to keep her friends and memories alive. Eventually, Renoir relents, promising to keep the light on for her return. Wishing her luck, he then disappears, finally exiting the canvas world to await his daughter in the real one. After the confrontation, Maelle and Verso enter the Desandra family canvas, where the latter finds the fading memory of his young self, finally recognizing it. Verso then confronts Maelle, revealing that he knows she lied. She has no intention of returning to the outside world. Like her father, Verso knows that remaining in the canvas will slowly kill Alicia. Maelle admits that outside the canvas she's voiceless, hopeless, and alone. Here, at least, she feels alive, so she refuses to let go. Verso, heartbroken, tells his younger self that it's time to stop painting. Maelle pushes back, reminding him of Renoir's own words: hold on to each other. At this point, the fate of Verso's canvas, including all of those who inhabit it, comes down to whomever is the victor of one final duel. If Maelle stands tall, defeating Verso in their battle, the man accepts his fate, tearfully pleading for his sister to unpaint him. Maelle refuses, hoping to regain the lifetime with her brother that was once stolen from her in the fire. Verso repeatedly tells Maelle that he doesn't want this life, but she nonetheless returns him and all of her friends, including all of those who were lost, like Ciel's husband Pierre, as well as Gustave and Sophie. Maelle brings everyone to Lumiere's concert hall to watch Verso perform a piano concert. As he prepares to play, he looks to his sister, seeing the paint take over her face like it once did their mother's. If Verso instead wins the face-off against Maelle, she begins to fade away instead, begging her brother not to leave her again. He assures her that everything will be okay, and as he holds Maelle in his arms, she vanishes, once again forced out of the canvas. Verso then looks to his eldest friends, Monoko and Esquier, telling them that he'll miss them as they vanish as well. Ciel follows not long after, as does Lune. Verso looks to the fading memory of his younger self, telling him that it's finally over. Verso grabs his younger self's hand, stopping him from painting for good. Sometime later, in the real world, the Desandra family reunites outside of their home. Renoir, Aline, Alicia holding the stuffed Esquier doll, and Clair all pay their respects to the late Verso, quietly remembering his sacrifice. Renoir and Aline then hold each other, finally reconciling outside of their son's world. As Clair walks off, Likely to continue her solitary vengeful war against the writers, her parents follow shortly after. Alicia is then left alone by her brother's grave. She looks up to see the memories of her Expedition 33 teammates: Lune, Gustave, Monoko, Esquier, Verso, Ciel, and finally, Maelle. They all wave goodbye to Alicia as their memories fade into familiar flower petals. This brings us to the end of the story of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Time will only tell if developers Sandfall Interactive will continue to tell us stories in the world of Clair Obscur. But regardless of whether or not we see another entry, what Clair Obscur Expedition 33 gave us is something special. A deeply personal story about grief, identity, and legacy, all told through the lens of a magical, beautifully painted world. And even if the combat didn't quite hook me, the world, its characters, and the emotional payoff absolutely did. Hey everybody, if you stuck with me through this entire breakdown, thank you so much. As always, I do my best to cover every major beat in these stories, but if I missed anything you thought was important, please do let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, consider giving it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out some of my other videos, they're like this. I cover the full storylines of video games, old, new, obscure, everything in between. You're gonna love it. Oh, and also you can help support like the awesome folks on screen by becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. They get early access to these videos and behind the scenes insight into my madness while I'm working on them. Thanks again for watching. I've been Suggestive Gaming, and now you're in the know.